Hi class, welcome to this Stat 312 jump video for chapters 1 through 4. To begin this video, you should hopefully have your jump handout handy and you may want to have your jump pulled up. This video, I'm going to give you a little bit of just like helpful hints for using jump in general because this is the first official jump video. But for the most part, these videos are not something that you absolutely have to watch if you're able to follow the jump handout instructions. If not, then this is me just taking you through the instructions. Okay, so to begin, I'm going to open up a new data table. So I'm going to go to File, New, Data Table. I'm going to make this a little easier to see visually. And for the first part of this handout, we really focus on that example with the 12-hour-old infants. And right here we have the listing of the 10 babies and their weight. So I'm going to go ahead and type this into JUMP. In order to do our practice, we need to have our data. Okay, so looking pretty good. Don't think I made any mistakes, but we'll find out when we start doing some calculations if things don't match up. One nice little housekeeping thing you might find useful is changing or labeling the top of your column. Naturally, it's going to say column 1, 2, 3, so on. To change it, you can double click on the column and a window will pop up and it'll allow you to change your column name. Also, it does give you a couple little options that may be useful if you have problems with the labeling of your data. And what I mean by that is sometimes JUMP will, well, always JUMP automatically assigns what type of variable it thinks your data is. Sometimes it gets it wrong. For example, if you're doing something where you're ranking things on a scale of 1 to 5, JUMP may see those numbers 1 through 5 and think they're their values, not understanding that they're a ranking, that they're a category. And so sometimes you have to adjust that. In general, if you go over to the left-hand column where will see your list of variables, the blue triangle says that you're working with continuous numerical data, which is appropriate when we're dealing with weight. When we're having that situation that I spoke of earlier, when we're having those categories, we would be dealing more with the nominal, and we would change that. And it would just be a simple click, and notice it will be a red histogram. That is something that kind of messes students up sometimes when they'll do calculations and they're not understanding why it's not working. That's usually the kind of uh-oh reason why it's not. Okay, so the first thing that's pretty important to us is how to get that summary statistics information. You have seen me do this before in the previous videos, but now we're going to do it a little more formally. So in order to do that, we're going to go to Analyze Distribution. Oops, don't need to do that. Ah, there we go. Love technology. All right, so we can drag and drop the column of interest to the Y comma columns. Notice it says that this is the required piece of information, and indeed it is. From there, we're going to select OK, and we're going to have a lovely little window pop up. In this window, we have our nice summary statistics. We've got our mean, standard deviation, standard error of the mean, and a 95% confidence interval for the mean, and our sample size. These are all important pieces of information and stuff that it's just easier to do with technology as opposed to calculating it by hand. A couple other things that we did in our first set of lecture slides was talking about confidence intervals. And using this analyze distribution function, we can get a lot of that information from this pop-up. So if I go up to the top where it says weight, you'll notice there's a little red triangle. If we select this triangle, we'll have a bunch of options that we're going to be pretty important to us. Among them is the test mean, confidence interval, and prediction interval. So going in order, the very first thing we did in the slides were confidence intervals. Specifically, we did a 99% confidence interval. Um, for confidence interval, 90, 95, and 99%, those are the most common values of confidence. That's why they are automatically popping up. If you are asked to do like an 80% confidence interval or something else, you can pretty simply hit other and then type in whatever level of confidence you need. But we don't actually need it in this case. So I'm going to go back to our red triangle, select confidence interval, and then the 99. And there you'll see that the confidence interval that we calculated by hand, that 5.81 to 8.34, is right there in black and white on your screen. Oops, sorry, keep doing that. Okay, so that's how we can do a pretty easy confidence interval in JMP. Now to do the prediction interval, it's pretty much the same process. Red triangle beside weight, we'll select prediction interval, and we'll need to adjust our confidence level. So automatically it's going to be 95 because that's the most common. We'll change that to 99%. Underneath it, it says enter number of future samples. Remember, the prediction interval is trying to predict um, cases that haven't occurred yet. Generally, excuse me, I'm yawning, we are doing one more value, but sometimes, depending on the problem, you may be asked to do more. But for now, we were asked what is the predicted weight range of one additional infant, so we'll leave that as 1. And you're going to just ignore this part. For this course, we're always going to do two-sided intervals. So we'll select OK, and we will get a lovely confidence interval. You can notice that under parameter it says individual and mean. Ignore the mean part, just focus on the individual. That is something we will talk about later in this course, but at this level, when we're talking about our one sample, our prediction interval for the individual is what we're focused on. Okay, so 2 other things left to talk about in this handout. Next is doing our confidence interval with our data. So once again, we're going to go to weight and that wonderful red triangle, and we're going to select test mean. Now, because it already has our data, we get pretty easy inputs here. We just need to write our specified hypothesized mean value, which from the problem, it told us that the, estimated true weight of infants should be 7.5. Underneath it, it says enter true standard deviation to do a z-test rather than a t-test. Remember, that's only if we have the population standard deviation. We do not have that in this case. You'll probably never have it because it's just really hard to get. And underneath it, it talks about a non-parametric test. Again, that's something that's beyond the level of this course. I do a non-parametric test in my job, and that happens generally when we have a small sample size that we can't assume is normal. In that case, we do a non-parametric test. But again, that is something that you're not going to really need to worry about. The only thing you are going to have to pay attention to is typing in that specified hypothesized value. From there, we'll select OK, and what will pop up is all that information you would have normally plugged in for your hypothesis test will pop up. Your test statistic that you would have calculated will pop up, and then underneath it, we'll get all these p-values. Now, you may be saying, all right, which p-value do I need? Well, that's going to be dependent on your alternative hypothesis. The one that has the absolute value of t, that's the two-sided hypothesis test, meaning when your alternative hypothesis was not equal to. Below it, we have when it was greater than and less than. And again, in order to reject your null hypothesis, the p-value must be less than alpha, which in this case is not any of them. So less to worry about in this case. Okay, so that's really what I wanted to show you as far as the distribution and what we really focused on for the majority of this particular lecture slides. I'm going to exit out of this, and the last thing I really want to show you deals with the 90% confidence interval for P. which was what we did on the very last slide in our lectures. And so in order to do this, we are going to go to Help, Sample Data. Help, Sample Data, and we're going to go to Calculators. And then there's going to pop up a bunch of options that are honestly going to be pretty helpful for us later in this course. You know, hypothesis test for two means. And we are going to select, in this case, the confidence interval for one mean. And we are going to type in our summary statistics because we already did some of the work. And we are going to type in, we want to do a z-test. So choosing our interval, it's going to be a z. Our average sample, that's that 1/50, which we know simplified to be 0.0555556. I'm going to round it a little bit. The population standard deviation, which we calculated to be 229,061. Our sample size, which we had adjusted, was going to be 54. Our confidence level was 90. And then bam, we have our Z multiplier. That's our critical value, the standard error of the mean, and then the part we care truly about, and that is our lower and upper limit. So as long as you type in everything correctly, JMP will give you the correct information. I apologize, I almost called this StatCrunch, which in some ways, with all the pointing and the clicking, I'm sure kind of does feel like StatCrunch to some people. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this handout. There really isn't anything else I need to talk about as far as JMP goes in this video. If you have questions, issues, please let me know and shoot me an email. Have a good night.